everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Audrey and I post beauty, lifestyle, some fitness content, and also content related to managing a chronic illness. So if you like any of that stuff, hit that like button and subscribe. Today, I wanted to sit down and just chat about my chronic illness and share my diagnosis story. If you didn't know, I have a rare chronic neuromuscular disease called myasthenia gravis, or for simplicity's sake, MG. June is actually MG Awareness Month, so this will be the first of a few videos that I plan to post this month, raising awareness for myasthenia gravis. I'm not really going to go too much into what the disease actually is because it's actually very complicated. I do talk a little bit about that in my introduction video, which I will put in a card if you're interested. There's also some very good information out there on the web, and I can link some stuff down below. Myasthenia gravis is known as the snowflake disease because each patient has a different experience with it. It's often diagnosed in young women and older men. I am 24 years old, so I fall into the young woman category. I began having symptoms in July of 2020 and was diagnosed with it at the end of September. It's been almost a year since my onset of symptoms. There were some early symptoms that at the time I didn't really think of as symptoms, but in hindsight, I know they were also related. I'll explain that a bit further. About mid-July of 2020, I began to notice that whenever I'd wash my face at night after taking my makeup off, no matter how hard I closed my eyes or which cleanser I used, my eyes would always sting like I'd gotten soap in my eyes. I also noticed that particularly at night, if I were really excited or had been speaking for a long period of time, I would lose the ability to enunciate my words. Then I noticed that if I were trying to drink from a straw, my mouth couldn't go around the straw. It was a symptom that really freaked me out, and I actually woke my mom up one night to tell her because it just felt like my mouth wasn't working. I wasn't sure how to describe it to her, so I described it as not being able to make a kissy face. It was weird, so she kind of brushed it off, but I kept tabs on it, I kept noticing it, and it persisted for a few weeks until the end of August, where one night when I was eating dinner, I could barely chew and move my lips, and I was really, really freaked out. So I had my mom take me to urgent care that night, and they were also very stumped. At urgent care, they had me do a few things with my eyes and my lips, like closing my eyes, pursing my lips, to see if my face muscles were working. There it was discovered that I actually wasn't closing my eyes all the way, which explains why I felt like I was getting soap in my eyes, because I was getting soap in my eyes. From the urgent care, I was actually sent to the ER to have an MRI done because they didn't have the equipment at the urgent care, but it was also because the doctor at the urgent care was concerned that I might be having a stroke or an aneurysm. Thankfully, the MRI came back clear, but it didn't really explain what was causing the bizarre symptoms. The ER doctor came back with an idea that he actually had to go look up because he couldn't remember the name of it. That was the first time anyone said the words myasthenia gravis. The next day, I was referred to a neurologist. A common symptom for MG is ptosis. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, or it's commonly called droopy eyes, where someone's not able to open one or both of their eyes. A symptom like mine, though, where my eyelids weren't closing all the way, isn't something that's really attributed to MG, so this neurologist didn't think it was MG because of that. He did order a blood panel to still check and see if I had different antibodies in my blood that would suggest a diagnosis of MG. I'll explain that one a little bit further. Myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disease, which basically means that my immune system isn't functioning properly. It's essentially attacking itself. There are antibodies in the blood that are blocking nerve receptors in the neuromuscular junction, causing muscle weakness, hence why it's called a neuromuscular disease. There are a few types of antibodies common in MG patients that are known. Because this is a rare disease, however, if tests come back negative for those antibodies, it could just mean that this particular patient has antibodies that essentially haven't really been discovered yet. And that's what this neurologist told me. And what do you know? All my tests came back negative. I was really frustrated at this point because my symptoms had gotten pretty bad and I could barely function. And keep in mind, this was only about 2 weeks after my visit to the ER. My symptoms progressed very, very quickly from mid-July to end of August, beginning of September. At this point, I basically put myself on a liquid diet because I had had a very hard time chewing. They also gave me a prescription for a medication called MYASTHENIA, which is a muscle strengthener and very, very common with MG patients. And honestly, it helped so much. The neurologist told me that if it were the case that my test came back negative, he was going to refer me to a bigger hospital that was more equipped to handle whatever this was. And that neurologist that I was referred to is actually my current neurologist, and she's fantastic. She was also convinced initially, though, that it was not myasthenia gravis. I asked her to keep an open mind because after reading about the disease and the symptoms that people can have for it, I was really, really sure that it was. She agreed to keep an open mind and wanted me to have a test called a single fiber electromyography. Don't know if I'm saying that right. Or an EMG to test the nerve function in my face, basically. I came back, I think it was about 2 weeks later for that. So keep in mind, this was almost exactly a month after my visit to the ER. I think it was like a month and a day. And it was about an hour-long test where they stuck a very, very thin electrode needle in my forehead. And they measured the jitters, is what they called them, that my face muscles were making. This test, as well as my response to the medication MYASTHENIA that I mentioned, resulted in an immediate diagnosis of myasthenia gravis. Because they weren't able to diagnose me with a normal blood panel for the common antibodies in MG patients, I was actually diagnosed with something called double seronegative myasthenia gravis. But I later had another blood panel done where they were able to get the acetylcholine receptors to show up. That's one of the very common ones that are found in a lot of MG patients. And this is actually what prompted doctors to highly recommend me as a candidate for a thymectomy, which I did end up having. That's a bit of a longer story though, so I'm going to make a separate video explaining my surgery, as well as a separate video explaining the treatment that I began almost immediately after my diagnosis and am still having today. Being diagnosed with a chronic illness, particularly an autoimmune disease during a global pandemic, has been very stressful and very scary. And because this is a chronic illness, it's one that I will have for the rest of my life. I've struggled with this a lot, honestly, because knowing the experiences that others have with this disease and some of my own experiences with it so far, it can be very debilitating. I am really fortunate to have received such a fast diagnosis, though. It only took about a month. I'm really fortunate to have such a great team of doctors with me. It's really hard, but I'm counting my blessings and I'm just remembering to be grateful for the little things. All right, everyone, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I have a link in my link tree to the Myasthenia Gravis Foundation of America's website where you can learn a lot more about the disease if you're curious. If you have any questions about my diagnosis or experience with the disease so far, feel free to leave a comment. I'm more than happy to educate others on my disease, so ask away, but I just ask that you be respectful. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button, and I will see you all later. Bye.